Welcome to Conscious Chronicles. For 12 minutes and 52 seconds, Lily Smith was dead. Her body lay broken, lifeless, while doctors fought to revive her. But she was somewhere else. Pulled from her physical form, she found herself in a realm more real than anything she had ever known. She saw her grandfather, radiant and whole, waiting for her. She felt the presence of luminous beings who knew her completely, loved her unconditionally. And then, she stood before a light so overwhelming, so infinite in its love, that she knew she was in the presence of Jesus Christ. He showed her the true impact of every choice, the purpose of suffering, the battle being waged beyond human sight, and a future that few are allowed to glimpse. But then, he spoke words that shattered everything. It is not yet your time. You must go back. Torn from paradise, Lily awoke to the pain of a shattered body, the disbelief of doctors, and a truth she could not keep to herself. This is her story in her own words. My name is Lily Smith, and what I'm about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and eternity. 3 years ago, on what began as an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I experienced something extraordinary. Something that defied logic, shattered my previous beliefs, and altered my understanding of existence itself. I died. For exactly 12 minutes and 52 seconds, my heart stopped beating. My lungs ceased their rhythmic rise and fall. My body lay motionless on the cold, unforgiving ground. And yet, I was not gone. I hesitated to share this story, not because I fear disbelief, though many will doubt, but because what I experienced was so sacred, so profoundly otherworldly, that human language feels woefully inadequate to describe it. But I can't keep it to myself. The truth I discovered on the other side is too important to remain unspoken. This is what happened. It was one of those perfect October afternoons, the kind where golden sunlight filters through the autumn leaves, setting everything aglow in shades of amber and crimson. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. I had gone riding at Hillcrest Stables, the place I had considered my second home for years. My horse that day was Artemis, a spirited Appaloosa I had ridden dozens of times before. She was powerful, yet graceful, a creature of instinct and energy. We started at a steady walk, moving along the perimeter of the property. Then, with a light squeeze of my heels, I urged her into a comfortable trot. The rhythm of her hooves against the ground, the whisper of the wind in the trees. It was all so peaceful. For a brief moment, everything else faded away. My worries, my responsibilities, the constant hum of everyday life. I felt completely present, utterly connected to the world around me. But peace can shatter in an instant. As we approached the western field, something startled Artemis. To this day, I don't know what it was. A snake? A sudden movement in the bushes? A shadow that spooked her? She reared up without warning, her front hooves pawing at the air. Panic surged through me. I tightened my grip on the reins, using every ounce of skill I had learned over years of riding. "Whoa, girl. Easy," I pleaded, trying to soothe her. But she wasn't listening. Time seemed to slow as I felt my body slipping. The reins slid through my fingers, useless. I was losing my seat, gravity claiming me as its own. I had just enough awareness to think, this is going to be bad. And then, the impact. My head struck a wooden fence post with a sickening crack. The sound of my helmet splitting echoed in my ears. Then, nothing. Or at least, that's what should have happened. I expected darkness, oblivion, a void. Instead, I felt a strange sensation, like being pulled through water. Except there was no resistance, no wetness. It was effortless, weightless. Then silence. The world around me had been full of chaos just moments before. The terrified neighing of Artemis, the distant shouts of other riders who had seen my fall. But suddenly, all sound vanished. And that's when I realized I was looking down at my own body. There I was, crumpled by the fence, utterly still. My riding helmet was split nearly in half. My body was sprawled at an unnatural angle, one leg twisted beneath me. My face was already beginning to swell and turn purple where it had struck the post. Blood trickled from my nose and ears, forming small dark pools on the ground. But I felt no pain, no fear, only a profound sense of curiosity. I should have been terrified. I should have been screaming, panicking, trying to make sense of the impossible. But instead, I was simply aware. How could I be looking at myself? How could I be floating above my own broken body? It defied every law of physics, every explanation I had ever been taught. And yet, in that moment, it felt completely natural. I wasn't alone. Something, or someone, was waiting for me. And what happened next changed everything. 2 other riders were racing toward my lifeless body. I recognized Jessica from my 3rd lesson group, a fellow student I had chatted with many times before. The other rider was an older man, a stranger to me. But in that moment, his face was set with grim determination as they both rushed to my side. I wanted to tell them that I was fine, that there was no need to panic, that I was right there, watching them. But I couldn't speak. I had no voice. I was somehow both there and not there. "Help! Someone call 911!" Jessica's voice rang out, urgent and desperate, as she leapt off her horse and knelt beside my body. "Lily! Lily! Can you hear me?" I could hear her. Perfectly. Every note of panic in her voice, every frantic breath she took. But my body didn't respond. My lips didn't move. My eyes remained closed. I watched as the older man bent down, his fingers pressing against my neck, searching for something that was no longer there. His expression darkened. "She's not breathing," he said, his voice strained. "No pulse. I'm starting CPR." He tilted my head back and placed his hands over my chest, beginning rhythmic compressions. Jessica was trembling as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers slipping against the screen as she called for emergency services. "Come on, Lily. Stay with us," the man muttered between compressions, his brow furrowed with urgency. But I wasn't really there anymore. As I watched them fight to bring me back, something strange caught my attention. A silver cord, delicate yet unbreakable, seemed to connect me to my physical body. It pulsed faintly, like a thin thread of light stretching between my floating awareness and the crumpled form on the ground below. But it was changing. The cord was thinning, stretching, becoming more transparent by the second. I had the distinct sense that it was fraying, unraveling, like a rubber band being pulled to its absolute limit. And then, snap. A sensation, like a tether breaking, a final irreversible release. In that instant, I knew with absolute certainty I had died. Yet to my astonishment, I was still aware, still conscious, still me, just without a physical body. Instead of darkness, instead of nothingness, I felt a strange force pulling me upward, a gentle yet irresistible current lifting me away from the scene below. I turned my attention downward one last time. I could see everything, the stables, the fields, the parking lot where flashing ambulance lights painted the ground in streaks of red and blue. I saw paramedics sprinting from their vehicles, their movements sharp and purposeful. Even the horses, restless in their stalls, tossing their heads as if they sensed the weight of the moment. I saw my own car parked near the entrance, my water bottle still in the cup holder, exactly where I had left it just an hour before. Everything looked both familiar and different. The world I had always known was still there, yet I was perceiving it through new eyes, eyes that could see more, feel more, understand more. Colors were richer, more vibrant than I had ever imagined. Details were sharper. I could make out the individual fibers of the paramedics' uniforms, the unique patterns of each horse's breathing. I could even sense the electrical energy buzzing through the power lines nearby. But then, the scene below began to shrink. The stables, the trees, the roads. All of it receded, growing smaller and smaller until it was no more than a distant speck. And then, the world as I knew it disappeared entirely. I was no longer in the earthly realm. Instead, I found myself being pulled towards something else, something vast and unknowable. A tunnel stretched out before me, but it was not what I had expected. It wasn't dark. It pulsed with a soft golden light, an illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The tunnel's walls, if they could even be called walls, weren't solid. They shifted, moved like flowing fabric, undulating as if they were alive, yet maintaining the shape of a passageway. I wasn't walking. I wasn't flying. I was simply being gently pulled forward, carried by an unseen force. It was effortless, natural, as though I had surrendered to the current of a river, yet there was no water, no resistance, no sensation of movement. And then, I heard something. It wasn't the harsh, chaotic noise of the physical world. It was music, not a melody that could be hummed, not a tune that could be written in notes. It was resonance, harmonies that vibrated through my very being, deep and eternal, as if they had always existed. And with it came the strangest realization of all. I wasn't afraid, not even a little. I had just died, just left my body, my life, my world behind. And yet, I felt no terror, no panic. Instead, I felt peace, a profound sense of rightness, as though I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The tunnel stretched on forever, and yet, I had no sense of time passing. Had I been traveling for seconds, minutes, years? It didn't matter, because time, at least the way I had once understood it, no longer existed. Something was waiting for me at the end of this tunnel. Something I had spent my entire life not knowing I had forgotten, and I was ready to remember. I now know that I was clinically dead for exactly 12 minutes and 52 seconds. But inside that tunnel, inside that space between worlds, time had no meaning. I moved forward, or perhaps I was simply drawn, pulled by a force beyond comprehension. The light ahead grew stronger, more intense, yet it did not blind me. Somehow, my non-physical eyes could perceive it without pain, without strain. It wasn't like earthly light, harsh or glaring. It was warm, welcoming, alive. And it was calling to me. A pull stronger than gravity urged me forward, not forcing me, but inviting me, like an unseen hand outstretched in absolute love. Then, suddenly, the tunnel opened up, and I emerged into a place unlike anything I had ever seen before. I found myself in what I can only describe as a vast, limitless space. It was filled with the same luminous energy I had seen in the tunnel, but here, it was even brighter, even more alive. Yet this light wasn't just around me. It was within me. I could feel it flowing through whatever form I now had. It wasn't a body in the way I had understood bodies before, but I was still me. I was still aware, whole, present, but lighter, unburdened. The first thing that struck me wasn't just the beauty of this place. It was the overwhelming sense of homecoming. I had never been here before, at least not in this life. And yet, I knew it. Deep in my soul, in a way that defied logic, I recognized this place. It was like stepping into a childhood home you hadn't seen in decades, yet still remembered in your bones. I'm home, I thought. And before the thought had even fully formed, I felt a response. Not in words, but in a wave of affirmation and love, like a warm current washing over me. The space around me began to shift, to take shape, not solidifying exactly, but becoming more defined. I perceived rolling meadows of the most vibrant green, stretching out endlessly beneath a sky of the deepest, most perfect blue. But I knew these weren't physical fields, not like on Earth. They were more than physical, something beyond what my earthly mind could fully grasp. My soul understood that my human brain was simply interpreting this place in familiar forms, translating something incomprehensibly vast into images I could process. Far in the distance, I saw mountains, not of rock, but of breathtaking light, shimmering as if woven from the very fabric of existence itself. Between me and those mountains lay a vast garden, bursting with flowers of colors I had never seen before, colors that don't exist in the physical spectrum. A breeze swept through the air, not a normal breeze, but a gentle energy that carried the most exquisite fragrances. Scents I knew, but had never smelled before. A perfume that seemed to awaken memories I had forgotten. And then I realized I wasn't alone. At first I sensed them rather than saw them. Presences, beings of light. As I focused, they became clearer, taking on more defined forms. Some remained as brilliant orbs of energy, pulsing with warmth and love. Others appeared as luminous, human-like figures, their very essence glowing with an indescribable radiance. They spoke to me, not with words, but through thoughts, emotions, and direct knowing. Welcome, Lily. The greeting filled me with a warmth so profound, it felt as though my entire soul was being embraced. There was no judgment, no expectations, no need to prove myself worthy. They knew me completely, every flaw, every mistake, every hidden doubt and insecurity, and they loved me unconditionally anyway. In their presence, all fear, all shame, all uncertainty simply melted away. Then, one presence drew closer. It felt familiar, and as it approached, its form became more defined, and I recognized him. It was my grandfather, John Smith. He had died when I was 12 years old. But now, here, he was radiant, whole, free from the cancer that had ravaged his body in his final days. He didn't look exactly as he had in life. He was younger, healthier, but it was him. His essence, his soul, was unmistakable. A wave of joy surged through me. A joy so pure, so overwhelming it would have brought me to my knees, if I had still had physical knees. Grandpa! I didn't speak, not with my mouth, but my thought, my very being reached him. He smiled. Hello, little flower. My breath, if I had needed breath, caught in my chest. No one else had ever called me that. It was his nickname for me, from the time I was small. A name I hadn't heard in years, yet the moment I did, it unlocked 1,000 childhood memories. The years I had spent grieving him, the pain of losing him, vanished. He was here. He had never truly left. How is this possible? I asked, not with words, but with my very soul. His reply wasn't just something I heard, it was something I knew. All things are possible with him. And somehow I understood. He meant God. A warmth, deeper than anything I had ever known, wrapped around me like the gentlest embrace. I had never felt more alive. Am I really dead? I asked, though even as I formed the question, it already felt irrelevant. Grandpa's answer was calm, certain. Your body has stopped for now, but you have never been more alive than you are in this moment. Before I could ask more, my attention was suddenly drawn elsewhere, to another presence, one so magnificent, so powerful, that all other beings, even my grandfather, seemed to dim in comparison. The light surrounding this presence was different, purer, stronger. It wasn't just light. It was the source of all light. As this being drew nearer, I knew I was about to meet the divine. I felt myself being filled with the most profound love I had ever experienced. A love so complete, so perfect, that it reached into the deepest parts of my being, healing wounds I hadn't even known were there. And then, I knew. Beyond any doubt, beyond any questioning, I was in the presence of Jesus Christ. I didn't see him in the way we perceive things with our physical eyes. There was no defined human form, no robe or sandals. Instead, I sensed him with my entire being. His presence was more real than anything I had ever experienced with my physical senses. If I had to describe him, I would say he was light, but not light as we know it. He was living light, conscious light, light that knew me, every thought, every doubt, every joy and sorrow, and loved me anyway. His presence radiated a warmth that penetrated to my very core. As he drew nearer, I felt no fear, no guilt, no shame, only a deep, overwhelming sense of belonging. I felt like a child who had been lost in a crowd, searching desperately for their parent, until, at last, they turned, and there he was. Relief, joy, the deep, unshakable certainty of homecoming. Then he spoke. I didn't hear his voice with my ears. Instead, his words resonated within me, not just as sound, but as pure knowing. Lily. The way he said my name, so full of understanding, compassion, and infinite love, broke something open inside me. A dam I hadn't even known was there suddenly burst, releasing everything I had held inside for so long. Doubts, fears, regrets. Why hadn't I believed more strongly? Why had I questioned so much? Why had I wasted so much time on things that standing here now seem so trivial? But there was no judgment in him, no disappointment, only love, only understanding. Do not be afraid, he said. You are precious to me. Those simple words shattered me. I wept, not with tears, for I had no physical body, but with my soul. I let go of every burden I had carried, every shame I had hidden. And instead of rejection, I felt his arms, his essence, wrap around me in the most perfect embrace. I have always been with you, Jesus told me, even in your moments of doubt, even when you could not feel my presence. And suddenly, I saw it. Moments from my life played before me, not in a sequence, but all at once. Times when I had felt alone, but I hadn't been. Struggles where I had thought I was forsaken, only to now see the unseen hands that had been guiding me. Coincidences that had not been coincidences at all, but divine intervention. He had been there all along, watching, loving, guiding me when I allowed it. At last, I managed to whisper the only words that came to me, Lord, I never truly understood. His reply was gentle, filled with patience and knowing. Faith is a journey, not a destination. You are finding your way to me, step by step. Then something extraordinary happened. Jesus showed me my life, not as a series of past events, but all at once, as if I could see every moment simultaneously. But I wasn't just observing my life. I was reliving it from multiple perspectives. I saw my earliest memories, being cradled in my mother's arms, taking my first steps, riding my bike for the first time. But now, I didn't just see my experience. I felt everyone else's emotions as well. I felt my mother's fierce love and protection as she held me, her wonder at the miracle of new life. I felt my father's pride and anxiety as he let go of my bike, knowing I might fall, but that I needed to learn independence. The review continued through my childhood, my awkward teenage years, my adulthood. Every significant moment, every choice, every relationship. Nothing was hidden, but there was no condemnation, only understanding. I saw the kindnesses I had done, things I had long forgotten, but which had rippled far beyond what I ever imagined. The elderly woman I had helped across the street, I felt her gratitude, her relief at being seen. The stray dog I had taken to a shelter, I felt his trust, his newfound hope. The friend whose tears I had dried after her breakup, I felt her comfort, the warmth of knowing she wasn't alone. But I also saw the pain I had caused. The harsh words I had spoken in anger to my mother, I felt her hurt. The gossip I had spread about a co-worker, I felt her humiliation when she heard the rumors. The homeless man I had ignored on the street, I felt his despair, the ache of being treated as invisible. These moments weren't shown to shame me. They were shown to teach me. I understood with perfect clarity that every action, every word, every thought affects not just ourselves, but others in ways we cannot always see. Our choices ripple outward, touching countless lives. Jesus spoke again. This is why love is the greatest commandment. And as he said it, I felt it. When you love others as yourself, when you treat them with kindness and compassion, you are participating in the divine. You are reflecting my love into the world. I saw how even the smallest acts of love had created waves of light, waves that continued long after the initial action. A compliment I had given to a struggling co-worker had given her the confidence to apply for a promotion. She got the job, which allowed her to move her family to a safer neighborhood. Her children's lives were changed because of that one moment of kindness. Conversely, I saw how selfish choices had created negative ripples. A time I had chosen not to volunteer at a community event because I was too tired had meant one less pair of hands, which had increased the burden on the other volunteers, which had led to a less successful outcome for the entire community. All of it matters, Jesus told me. Every choice, every action, every thought. Not because I stand in judgment, but because you are connected to every other soul in ways you cannot yet comprehend. The interconnectedness of all things became clearer than ever. I had never been alone. None of us ever are. And as my life review continued, I felt the deepest question of all begin to form within me. What happens next? As my life review continued, I began to see patterns emerge. Times when I had grown spiritually, times when I had stagnated, and times when I had regressed. I saw how certain challenges, which had once seemed cruel, unfair, or even meaningless, had actually been opportunities, moments designed for me to develop compassion, resilience, and wisdom. Suffering has purpose, Jesus explained, sensing my questions before I could even form them. The words penetrated me with an understanding beyond thought. The soul learns compassion through experiencing pain. It learns gratitude through experiencing loss. It learns strength through experiencing weakness. And in that moment, I finally understood why bad things happen to good people. Not because God causes suffering, but because He can transform it, redeem it, and use it for a greater purpose. Every tear shed in the physical world is known to Him. Every cry of pain is heard and held in His heart. But the review of my life wasn't limited to just my own choices and experiences. I was shown the impact of my ancestors' lives, how their choices, their faith, and even their wounds had rippled forward through generations. I saw how the faith of my grandparents had shaped me, even when I hadn't realized it. I saw how the wounds my parents carried from their own childhoods had unknowingly affected how they raised me. I saw how the cultural and historical circumstances of my time had influenced my opportunities, my struggles, my perception of reality itself. You are part of a greater story, Jesus told me. Each soul's journey is unique, yet deeply connected to all others. No one walks alone, even when it seems that way. As my life review began to slow, I was shown something unexpected. Moments when I had almost glimpsed the greater reality I was now experiencing. Times when I had felt a strange peace in prayer, a quiet knowing during meditation. Moments in nature when I had sensed a presence greater than myself, standing at the edge of something vast, eternal, unseen. Instances of synchronicity, coincidences that had never really been coincidences at all. You were beginning to awaken, Jesus told me. Your soul was preparing for deeper understanding. Then I was shown my final moments before the accident, my joy in the crisp autumn air, my deep connection with Artemis, the complete unawareness that these would be my last moments in physical form. And for the first time, I saw my death not as a tragedy, but as a transition, a doorway, a passage from one state of being to another. When my life review was complete, I felt changed, humbled yet elevated, more aware of my failings, yet more accepting of them. I was more conscious of the impact of my choices, yet more assured of divine mercy and grace. Do you understand now? Jesus asked. I'm beginning to, I replied, though I knew my understanding was still infinitely small compared to the vast wisdom that surrounded me. Then, Jesus did something unexpected. He showed me not just my past, but glimpses of the future. Not my personal future, but the future of humanity itself. What I am about to show you, Jesus said, few are permitted to see, but you must return with this knowledge. Though many will doubt your words, you must share them. In an instant, visions flooded into me, so profound, so overwhelming, that my very soul trembled under the weight of them. I saw the immediate aftermath of my accident, the paramedics working desperately to revive me, my family rushing to the hospital, my friends gathering in prayer. I saw my mother collapse in grief in the waiting room, my father pacing with red-rimmed eyes, their long-standing bitterness forgotten in the face of their shared fear of losing me. Then the perspective widened, and I saw beyond my personal life to the state of humanity itself. I saw a spiritual battle being waged on earth, not with swords, not with armies, but with ideas, beliefs, values, choices. This is the true nature of the struggle, Jesus explained. Not flesh against flesh, but spirit against spirit. The conflicts you see in the world are merely reflections of a deeper spiritual reality. I saw how easily people were deceived, chasing after things that could never satisfy their souls. Money, power, pleasure, fame. I saw how these empty pursuits left them hollow, always searching, always hungry, but never finding peace. They seek living water from broken cisterns, Jesus said, echoing the words of the prophet Jeremiah. They search for fulfillment in everything, except the one who created them to be fulfilled in him. I saw the consequences of humanity turning away from divine truth. Not divine punishment, but the natural result of choices made against the eternal laws of the soul. Just as ignoring the laws of gravity leads to physical harm, ignoring the laws of the spirit leads to spiritual harm. I do not wish this suffering upon them, Jesus said, his love for humanity radiating so intensely that it brought me to tears. But I have given them free will, and without freedom, love cannot exist. I desire their love freely given, not compelled. Then, I saw something that shocked me. The reality of evil, not just human wrongdoing, but conscious, intelligent spiritual forces actively working against divine goodness. I saw how these dark forces influenced human thinking, exploited weaknesses, magnified fears, and distorted truth. The enemy is real, Jesus said, but his power is limited and his defeat is certain. Do not fear him, but do not ignore his reality. I was then shown the future, not in specific events, but in spiritual currents. A time of increasing polarization, where the distinction between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, would become sharper. The lukewarm time is ending, Jesus said. The time of sitting on fences of spiritual compromise is drawing to a close. Each soul will be called to decide, whom will they serve? Yet, with this sobering vision, I was also shown hope. A great awakening stirring. Souls turning back to divine truth. Communities being transformed by faith. I saw the power of simple obedience. How ordinary people living in truth and love could change the world. My people will shine like stars in the darkness, Jesus said. Their light will draw those who hunger for truth. And then, he showed me his love for each individual soul, how he pursued them, how he longed for them, how he grieved when they turned away. And at last, he spoke the words that pierced through my very essence. Tell them I love them. Tell them I am real, that I am near, that I see their struggles and their pain. Tell them I have not abandoned this world. Tell them I am coming back, and sooner than they think. As these revelations flooded into me, I felt something shift, something pulling me back toward the world I had left behind. I felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. How could I possibly remember all of this, let alone communicate it? How could words ever capture what I had just experienced? Jesus, of course, knew my thoughts before I could even ask. Do not worry, he assured me. The Spirit will bring to your remembrance what you need to share. Not all of what you have seen is for everyone to hear, but speak what the Spirit prompts, when he prompts. I barely had time to process those words before Jesus spoke again, his voice filled with infinite tenderness. It is not yet your time, Lily. And then, you must go back. Go back? The words sent a shockwave through my being. Go back. The very thought was impossible, unbearable. How could I leave this place? This realm of perfect love, perfect understanding, perfect peace. How could I return to the limitations of physical life, to a world so full of pain, uncertainty, and struggle after experiencing such freedom. But why? I asked, for the first time since arriving in this place, feeling something akin to grief. Why send me back? Jesus' compassion surrounded me like a warm embrace, a presence of love so strong it made my question seem small. Because your work is not finished, he answered gently. There are things for you to do, people for you to reach, a testimony for you to share that only you can give. I wanted to argue, to plead, to negotiate, but in his presence I understood something profound. His perspective was infinitely wider than mine. His wisdom infinitely deeper. If he said I needed to go back, then there was purpose in it, meaning beyond what I could currently comprehend. Will I remember all of this? I asked, afraid that the profound truths I had learned would slip away when I returned to my limited human brain. You will remember what you need to remember, Jesus reassured me. Some things will be clear immediately. Others will return to you over time as you are ready to receive them. A part of me did want to go back, to see my family again, to tell them what I had experienced, to live differently with the knowledge I now possessed. But another part of me was afraid of the pain, afraid of the limitations of a physical body after experiencing such expansion. I will be with you always, Jesus promised, reading my conflicted thoughts, even to the end of the age. Then he looked at me with such love that I thought my soul might dissolve into it. You have always been mine, Lily, even when you didn't fully know it. And now, you go back, as my witness. A shift occurred. A pulling, gentle yet undeniable, began to draw me away from this realm of light and love. I turned to see my grandfather approaching one last time. His presence wrapped around me in a final embrace. Tell your grandmother I'm waiting for her, he said. Tell her not to fear the crossing. I'll be here to meet her, just as I was here for you. Tears filled my soul. I wanted to stay, to ask him more questions, to simply be with him a little longer. But the pull became stronger. Go with grace, little flower, he said, calling me by his old nickname one last time. Live well, love deeply, remember what you've seen. The light began to recede. Or perhaps I was the one moving away from it. The tunnel reappeared, but this time I was traveling in the opposite direction. I felt myself becoming heavier, denser. The unlimited awareness I had known just moments before began to narrow. The vast, all-encompassing understanding I had possessed started focusing down into something smaller, more confined. Then, sensations, pain, pressure, the crushing weight of physical existence. There was a moment of resistance, a hesitation at the threshold between realms. Then, with what felt like a great rushing of wind, I was back. The first thing I became aware of was the pain, intense, all-encompassing. A searing ache radiated from my head, spreading through every nerve in my body. Then, sounds, the beeping of machines, the urgent voices of doctors and nurses, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes against the hospital floor. We've got a rhythm, someone shouted. She's back. I tried to open my eyes. I couldn't. I tried to speak, but there was something blocking my throat. A tube. Panic began to rise in me. After the freedom I had just experienced, this new prison of flesh was terrifying. Then I remembered Jesus' words. I will be with you always. I clung to that promise like a lifeline. Then, gradually, I became aware of a hand holding mine. my mother's hand. I knew I couldn't squeeze back, couldn't give any sign that I knew she was there. But I felt her presence, and it brought me comfort. Time passed. I wasn't sure how much. I drifted in and out of consciousness. The pain sometimes receded under medication, sometimes returned with brutal force. But through it all, I held on to what I had seen, to what I had learned. I refused to let it slip away. Then, finally, I opened my eyes. The first face I saw was my mother's. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her face pale with worry. But when she saw me awake, her expression transformed into joy, into relief so profound it brought tears to my own eyes. "Lily," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're back. Oh God, you're back." I tried to speak, but the breathing tube was still in place. Frustration filled me. I had so much to tell her, so much to share, and I couldn't speak a word. They told me I had been unconscious for 3 days. In those 3 days, I had traveled beyond time itself. "You're very lucky to be alive," the doctor said. "When they brought you in, you had no pulse, no respiration. The paramedics performed CPR for almost 13 minutes before they got you back." I overheard him murmur to a nurse, "It's remarkable. Given the severity of the injury and the length of time without oxygen, I would have expected significant brain damage. But her responses are better than we could have hoped for." Hours later, they removed the breathing tube. My throat was raw, my voice a raspy whisper, but I could finally speak. I turned to my mother, her face still pale with emotion. "Mom," I croaked, my voice weak but determined. She leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "What is it, sweetheart?" I swallowed. "I died," I whispered, "and I saw Jesus." My mother stiffened slightly, concern flashing across her face. "Lily, you've been through a traumatic experience. The brain can create all sorts of—" "No," I interrupted, my voice stronger than I thought possible. I would not let her explain this away. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't my brain creating comfort scenarios. It was real, Mom. She opened her mouth to argue, but I pressed on. Grandpa John was there. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. I searched her face, watching carefully as her skepticism began to waver. He called me Little Flower. She inhaled sharply. "No one else ever called me that, Mom. How would I know that if I hadn't really seen him?" Her shoulders sagged slightly, her defenses cracking just a little. I wasn't done. "And he told me to tell you something." She swallowed hard, her gaze locked on mine. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a slow, steady breath. "He said to tell Grandma that he's waiting for her, that she shouldn't fear the crossing. He'll be there to meet her when her time comes, just as he was there for me." Tears welled in my mother's eyes. She knew. She felt it. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed them to her lips. "That sounds like something he would say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I let the silence stretch between us, giving her the space to absorb it. There was no need to convince her further. The truth had already taken root. Over the next few hours and days, as my strength gradually returned, I shared more of what I had experienced. Some people listened with open hearts, drinking in every word. Others, like the medical team, were far more skeptical. When I tried to tell Dr. Chen, my attending physician, about what had happened, he listened with a polite smile, but an unmistakable air of dismissal. "Many patients report unusual experiences during periods of unconsciousness," he said, his tone clinical. detached. The brain, especially under stress, can create incredibly vivid dreams. I clenched my jaw. Doctor, I was dead. He hesitated, his smile faltering for just a moment. I could tell he wanted to correct me, wanted to remind me that my heart had stopped, but that modern medicine had brought me back. But instead, he simply sighed. What matters, he said finally, is that you're here. You survived. I knew then that no matter what I said, he wouldn't accept my experience as anything more than a product of the mind. But I also knew something else. I hadn't imagined it. This wasn't some desperate hallucination created by a dying brain. It was more real than this world itself. And no one could take that from me. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized something deeply unsettling. The world I had returned to felt different. It wasn't just my body that had changed, it was my soul. I had seen beyond the veil. I had stood in the presence of Jesus Christ. I had felt the unconditional love of the divine, witnessed the interconnectedness of all souls, and understood the weight of every choice. And now, I was expected to return to normal, to pretend that this world was all there was. I knew that wasn't possible. I hadn't come back just to live an ordinary life. I had come back because I had a mission. The weight of my experience pressed heavily on me. I had to share it. I had to tell people what I had seen, what I had learned, what I now knew with absolute certainty. I wasn't here to convince doctors or scientists. I wasn't here to debate skeptics. I was here for the souls who were searching, the ones who had doubted, just as I once had, the ones who had feared death, the ones who had wondered if God was really there. And so, as soon as I was